A very good morning and welcome to NTV Today. It's 3 minutes past 9. My name is Ken Mijungu, and on this day we are going to discuss about youth issues. It's a Thursday, so it's a good day to discuss about youth issues. And by the way, the draft youth development policy is ready. We'll take a keen look at that with my panel this morning. Well, Stella Nderitu from ELF, that's the Emerging Leaders Foundation. She is the programs officer. She joins me in studio. So is Raymond Ocheng, the Secretary Youth Affairs, State Department of Youth Affairs. They join me in studio to discuss the issue of the youth development policy. And we're joining Lois Wangoi shortly to speak to her. She has a panel in studio to talk about the same thing. But just one question for you each. I'll begin with Stella. Stella, is it a review or a complete makeover of the youth policy?
It is a validation of the inputs made during the review.
Okay.
That's what is happening now.
Validation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Your view?
It is getting the critical voices that will then inform a good policy, because if we don't have a good policy, we'll have bad legislation.
Okay.
But this is a game changer, because
Okay.
2010 Constitution of Kenya, 2010, since then the policy has never been reviewed.
Okay.
Emerging issues, youth now being seen not as a vice, but as an opportunity. How do we harness that?
Great. Let me bring the conversation back right here in studio. And I have Stella Nderitu, a programs officer at ELF, that is Emerging Leaders Foundation. And of course, I have the Secretary Youth Affairs, that's Raymond Ocheng. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to share with us your thoughts on the policy. And this is the first time that this policy is being looked at post the 2010 Constitution. And from what you told me earlier is that it's not been aligned. What areas are you seeking to address with this policy specifically?
Ken, thank you so much. In 2007, you remember the milestones that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 brought were the devolved government. And we have now 2 tiers of government. We have the national government and we have the county government. If you look at our policy of 2007, it's still talking about regions. Still talking about provinces. But remember, we have moved away from that. We have now the national and the county governments. County governments, we have 47 governments who, as much as young youth is not a devolved function, but by effect, these counties have got youth functions because they have county executive committee members on youth who are deliberating and dealing with young people. So then that has to be harnessed. The other issue is coordination. How then do we coordinate the youth sector? You're aware that within the civil society, within the county governments, there are many actors that are working around doing the youth issues. You cannot synergize and have an integrated information that this is what we are doing in terms of the young people. So it is going to also to bring law and order in the sector. We also have Vision 2030. That then this policy has to really look at, and the Big Four agenda. Okay. Because Big Four agenda right now is huge.
But Big Four agenda is temporary. I mean, you can't put it in a policy.
Yeah, whether it's temporary, but remember it is domiciled and it is extracted from the Vision 2030.
Okay, so there's a way they connect somehow.
Yeah, because way and beyond still you must talk about universal healthcare. Okay. Whether we finish the Big Four agenda era.
I like some of the proposals in the policy. I'll be specifically talking about that. But Stella, right straight from your mind, what necessitates, apart from the fact that it's not been aligned, it's been a while since the last review was done, top of your mind, what necessitates this? What is the need? What is the need?
I think first, when you talk about alignment, we have to understand that Kenya has moved. We've progressed with time, and spaces have changed for young people. Industries have changed. When you talk about the workplace of young people, not everybody has an 8-to-5 job. So what happens to the creatives, the bloggers, the writers who work from home? How do you regulate that, and how do you harness on the power of such young people? But what again necessitates this is, why do we review policies? We review them because there are changes that happen in the process, and we want to bring more people. This is a public policy. You want to engage more people into it and make sure that everybody is served. And we also need to leverage on the Constitution of 2010, which takes back power to the people. So that's why we needed to do this, to pick more thoughts of young people and even ask some of the actors that are working with young people, what do they think needs to be included in the policy.
Was public participation done in this? Have the young people been consulted, or it's a small team sitting somewhere and deciding this is what the youth needs, Stella?
Yeah, public participation was done.
Okay.
What maybe we need to discuss is, was it adequate?
Okay.
Did everybody get a chance to do this? And remember, when we did the first review, the ministry opened up public participation. And when when the civil society sector realized that this was not enough, I saw youth-serving organizations begin to create their own platform, coming together and discussing it and actually sharing their statements with the ministry. So public participation was done. Maybe in future we just need to do it more and more and involve more stakeholders.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking that is a while ago, the Speaker of the Senate said that when he was the governor, and he said, you know, I've been on both sides. And what usually happens during public participation is, you know, we call a few of our friends, sit with them, and then they'll ratify what exactly we want and not necessarily what other people want. And now you're steering this agenda, right?
Yes. And Ken, I think Stella answering was much better, because from an insider point of view, it would have been maybe I'm defending government.
Yes, we would have.
But at the end of the day, I was on the other side. I was the CEO National Youth Council, and we could really push the government that, you know, we are the young people. Now I'm on this other side. And I'll tell you, we really appreciate in terms of the effort that have been done. And again, the government creates a platform. And the civil society youth-serving organizations have done a tremendous job. Some of them have taken this policy and gone down and broken it down to their specific courts, because we brought private sector, and private sector is still the informal, and the formal we have the border. So all these specialized groups went and cascaded this document. And we told them there is no harm. Actually, by the day that we were validating for the youth-serving organization, there was a meeting before by CSA Place, by various groups that were just looking at it so that they can give a very concerted, solid input.
Okay.
Yes.
There is an argument, Stella, that this review inevitably denies the Youth Council the autonomy. The CEO was supposed to be here, but unfortunately he's not here. But it's sort of, I don't want to talk to him because he's an insider. So you tell me, does it deny the Youth Council the autonomy that it deserves and requires in order to operate? Because I hear it takes it, is it to the State Department, strictly speaking, as a parastatal. So it denies that autonomy.
Yeah. That's our concern.
Yes.
This body is supposed to regulate and offer what can you say, a watchdog role. It's supposed to offer oversight for young people's development funds. And so when it's under a ministry, when it's under a department, then we wonder how does it then become independent and be able to speak out about youth funds? And we know what has happened to a lot of youth funds in this country. But let's go back to the other policy now of 2007. One of the things that we celebrated for is the establishment of the National Youth Council and the affirmative funds. If NYC was supported as it was supposed to be, then we would be talking about a different story right now.
Exactly. And he can tell us because he was right there.
Yes. And so one of the reasons why we are reviewing this policy is for us to get better and not repeat our mistakes. So again, this policy needs to strengthen the role of NYC, which is not.
But the funding bit, if at all it's assimilated and is swallowed in the ministry, do you think the funding bit will be addressed? Because they really suffered. They really suffered.
Yes. I think it shouldn't be under the ministry. I think
but the funding bit, the funding bit, I mean, if it's under the ministry, then the budget will be allocated automatically. They'll have an autonomy in terms of their expenditure, right? So will it address that?
Yeah, I think it will. It will. Even independent authorities do get funding even when they are not under ministries. So it will. It will, yes.
What is the good thing that comes with this?
No, let me, Ken, thank you so much. One thing we must appreciate one thing. The policy of 2007, one of the milestones that the policy had was bringing the National Youth Council Act of 2009. So the government was very deliberate. And Ken, we must go back in history and begin to do a review of why is the NYC where it is. NYC has been having political challenges because, you see, we are a political economy. So what happened? The process that brought the National Youth Council delegates ended up bringing politicians in quotes. And let me tell you, the ministry has not even been a challenge to National Youth Council. The challenge has been Parliament. And there are sessions that I was a CEO of NYC, and I go and I try to push the budget issue. Ken, do you know what the MPs could tell me? When a CEO, do you want us to sign our death certificate? Because
it will fund
if an MP, I can mobilize women and have a young person who is from the university with the gift of the gab, and they also have funds to mobilize youth in equal measure. MP said, you know
You're in
what,
trouble.
go check this process so that we don't have, and we can benchmark Rwanda, Uganda, they have non-politicized processes whereby the outcome of the delegate is not a political, is not kind of a politician. Remember, some politicians, MPs campaigned for these delegates so that you wanted a young person that you can control. Then later, so that is the main challenge. Okay. But let me tell you, the government is committed, Ken. And you know one thing is, the youth are the numbers. And people are saying, and young people are like what Akina Stella are pushing, that if you are not on the table, you will be the menu. So we want to bring young people on the table. And this policy is even going to give NYC very succinct roles, and they will
Stella is not assured that it's a good thing to
She is. We work together. Actually,
she's not.
We've sat on
Are you
tables.
supporting that?
I think if they promise to do it, then they should make true their promise, which
Are they
does not
politicians?
happen in most of the...
Yes, are they
I mean, even in government ministries, it's political. You and I know that it's political. So it's not really a matter of, fine, if it falls under the ministry, then the ministry has to be very deliberate about enhancing the role of NYC. Because if NYC worked as it's supposed to, then we would have a lot of harmony in terms of youth projects, which we don't have now.
Can I tell you that Stella can agree that right now in the process, the CEO, National Youth Council, is at the center. And we must appreciate, Stella, I know within a week we sit with you on a table 3 times or 2 times. Ken, does that not mean openness? Even for the government to bring a young person who has the look and feel, and the optics, the way I look, which is not more of a typical government, tells you there is a deliberateness, even from my CS, to make sure that, you know what, let's open it up for the young people.
Okay.
We have even a CS who even says, when you get a slot, I want more of a young person than myself. Because it's those young people should be expressing the need. So we are getting there. I'm not saying everything is 100%, but Stella, we agree we are getting there.
In other words, Stella, do you think the good will outweigh the bad?
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah. I think we've expected that so much.
She's not.
Ken, she's very happy. Behind the scenes, before we come on camera, she's a great person.
I hope, because all we need is goodwill. Yeah, all we need is goodwill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we need to speak about specifically what we're looking at with this policy review. I like the fact that they are thinking of even just the well-being of the youth to begin with, nutrition, you know. They're thinking of that. And I'm looking at the kind of stakeholders that were brought in to develop this. Perhaps tell me, Stella, who were involved in this process?
I know the interfaith sector was involved, and we know the kind of role that they play, especially in terms of health services in this country. Different ministries, we have civil service organizations, the youth serving organizations, and even other organizations that don't work for young people. And different youth groups across the country really came together to give their views. So I really appreciate the different kind of consultations that have been going on and the input in this whole process. But it's not really about who was involved in this process. It's about everything being included in the paper and now the implementation bit.
Okay.
That is the most important thing.
Okay.
Yes.
No, but it's also important because then the question, I had the discussion from Eldoret, and one of the questions that they were trying to address is the involvement of the youth right from the beginning, even in making this decision. So when I'm talking about who are involved, I'm looking at a picture full of the youth saying what they really want, or it's someone saying this is what they want and this is what we want for them.
Ken, the young people involved, we went throughout the country. And I'm telling you, some were so heated that even when I was a CEO of National Youth Council in Kisumu, we were almost being expunged from the room because we just told them, we've not come to answer the questions. You see, the problem sometimes that we've always had is that we have more answers even before people raise the questions. So we told them, we are here to listen to you.
Okay.
And we've listened, and that has been the trajectory that the ministry has taken these forums to. And that's why even we were even very deliberate after that, came and brought faith-based organizations, because we know in terms of value systems, Aga Khan Foundation did a research the other day, Ken, and they said over 80% of young people are very concerned and value sentimentally their religion. But again, when they were asked, over 60% said, if you make money hooks and crooks, no problem.
That's the 2017.
And that also tells you about the value system. So we felt the faith-based organizations are very critical on this area in terms of looking at, we have Chapter 6 of the Constitution in this country that is talking about leadership. We have Article 10 that talks about national values. So how do we bring the values? We brought youth sector organizations, we brought development partners, and Ken, this was deliberate to make sure that all the sentiments and critical inputs of these groups are brought on board.
Okay.
Yes.
Very interesting. But you haven't told us why they wanted to lynch you in Kisumu.
They wanted to, because they said, you know what, we have had this...
several times. So time and again,
yeah,
this is what
we are being told
okay.
what we need to, and we told them this time, we have a document we are making. And we are here to get your input so that because there are many challenges that are faced. Right now, ICT revolution is something that we must up.
Yes,
we have talked about demographic dividends of the young people. We're talking about young people are the majority. Some saying 70%, some saying over 20 million people. But let me tell you, you cannot ignore that. So that's why we are very strategic that we cannot ignore that. Talent is key. Mentorship is what we are also looking into the policy. That a young person should not see that, and we have even been seeing the debate of mentorship with a musician and using with government exchange of, if they are even saying that I must be paid to mentor the young people. But then can we look at mentorship holistically? Such that a young person succeeding in this country should not imagine, I must be a politician. Okay. Because right now I meet young people and say, Raymond, how can I get into parliament? And I tell them, that's not the only way to get into parliament. The other last thing, Ken, is mindset. Because young people feel that for me to be doing well, I must dress like Ken. I must be on suit and tie. But right now, with the ICT revolution, with the agriculture and going that way, agribusiness, we have millionaires who are putting on T-shirts and shirts. And actually, people in suit and ties like me are slaves. And we don't know.
It's true. They are your employer.
So there's this opportunity. Yeah. Yes. Zuckerberg, when he came, on a jeans and a T-shirt.
Yes. Stella, you spoke about the ICT revolution. This is key for you. I don't know why. Twice it's been mentioned, and he's also mentioned. Why is this very key in the youth development? Is it the new frontier for success or something?
Yes, it is. One of the biggest concerns, I think, everywhere, and it's a global issue, but it's really big in Kenya, is youth unemployment. Youth unemployment. And we cannot talk about solutions to youth unemployment without looking at the ICT revolution, that you don't need to go to an office to deliver on something. You can sit down as a creative and do something with what you have, the different resources. And when you talk about the space expanding every time and everywhere across Kenya, then we also have to talk about the role of government in this. So how does government come on board now to facilitate that, to enhance that? Young people can access internet, for instance. It doesn't need to be very expensive for a young person to be able to access internet, to come up with a blog, for instance, to do programming, Yeah, so the fact that ICT enables young people, not even young people only, but then you can sit down and work from just anywhere and come up with ideas and share with the world, then that's a big deal.
Okay, I'd like to speak more about the strategies in the next, we have a few minutes on the clock, but I just want to go because I see someone is asking me about the old document. How practical was it? How practical was it, the 2007?
The 2007 was very practical because, remember, it brought the National Youth Council that we're talking about. It brought the affirmative funds.
Yes.
When you're talking about youth fund, when you're talking about Wezo fund, all those came
they were
from...
all in that document?
Yes, because how do you empower the young people? It's not only to build their capacity, but you must give them the resources. And let me also add one thing that Stella said. We are going beyond unemployment, but we are even addressing underemployment. Ken, young people are employed, but mostly they are given the 3D jobs: derogative, demeaning, degrading, dehumanizing, all the types of these jobs that we have. But then some of the areas like governance and participation is looking at even succession management. How do we bring even young people at decision-making points? As much as there are few, yes, I know people may say that, public service, when we have over only, I'll check my statistic, around over 47,000, we have over 18 million young people. It's not enough. But you see what? When they're at the decision-making table, they can affect many others. Me, I'm a young person. I'm the Secretary of Youth. That's a privilege and that's an opportunity that we're really appreciating. But even me, I also must do something and not just say I'm a young person. So age should not only be a qualification, but we must also prove that as much as we are young, we can also do something worthwhile.
Okay, and the president has a big problem with the young people in...
Yeah, and you heard it say that, what, I give them money, and Stella, some of the young people are given positions, they don't pick your phones.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they change all of a sudden, yes. and they're all over the place.
Does Kibagendi pick calls?
He picks my calls.
Okay. He was my schoolmate, just 2 classes ahead of me. Yeah.
He's good, he's a good person.
No, actually, a class ahead of me. Yes. So he picks
at
phone calls.
School, I remember.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah. Stella, talk to me about the affirmative funds, the proposal to bring them under one umbrella. How will that work to affect the original document and
Yeah.
what it was supposed to do at the beginning?
We actually did a document on that, the amalgamation of all the funds
Yes.
into one thing. Is it really good for young people, or is it a threat to young people's progress? One, because of organization. And that is why I keep saying NYC should be supported and enhanced, because one of the things it was supposed to do was to come and regulate and harmonize youth serving organizations to make sure that young people are very organized. As opposed to what women are. Women are very organized. So one of the threats to this amalgamation is that the women's
They'll take it
movement,
over. They'll take it
so
over. Yes.
makes me happy on one side because I'm a woman and I love the women's
And your
movement.
youth?
But I think it's a threat to
So
young
you take
people.
both.
They are
They'll
not
take
more
both.
organized.
So you'll be
Beneficiary.
both in youth and
And women.
Yeah, so
and-
I think it needs to be guided.
Okay.
There needs to be quotas that guide certain funds, and young people will be favored in a certain way. Otherwise, the youth
Ken, let
will
me
be
speak to it, but on a
overtaken.
very limited scope. There's a task force that is reviewing this. I know there are demerits and merits of a merger, and the demerits, Stella has really canvassed well, how women are organized. You look at Embrace. It doesn't matter which political divide you're coming from, but if it is pushing the women agenda, the young people, again, sometimes the lethargic, we even go to areas whereby they are not even applying for AGPO. They are not even applying for the funds because they feel this government money will be traced. So at the end of the day, they are demerits, and I'll not speak for that because the task force, with whatever way they will direct us, there will be very concrete reasons. And there'll also be public participation in terms of what they are suggesting. Is it right? So I believe they'll get there and they'll give us the information.
Okay.
And I think it's not a hard task really to do. It's possible to organize young people, and if we're deliberate about it and come up with specific measures to make sure that young people are more organized, then we can really achieve it, and the bringing together of all the funds will not really be an issue of concern.
Okay.
Yes.
It will not be.
So long as youth issues are ring-fenced,
So long as they're organized.
And
Still
there's a way they're
both ways can work.
protected.
They're
And there's a
protected.
way
Yes,
they're protected.
yes, yes,
Because
yes.
even now, we know the opportunities that are available.
Yeah.
I'm exiting the youth.
Yeah.
And probably I'll not be able
or
but
you're
if
about
I-
to exit, we'll do for you a party.
Actually, I have.
It's emotional.
Actually, I have.
Oh, you
Oh,
have?
Yes.
okay.
Sorry,
Yes,
sorry.
I'm that old. Because the most important thing is when I graduate to the next level,
Yes.
then I had set up systems down
True,
here
Yes.
true.
that ensures that the youth are not protected. So I'll still be participating in the things I shouldn't.
True.
So long as that protection is guaranteed.
Is
Yes.
guaranteed.
And that they say is a challenge, Stella.
Yes.
How do we guarantee it, for example? Just in 1 minute, because we have to take a break. At what point would you think the youth, that protection is guaranteed for the youth, if we have to bring them under one roof? All this.
I think at this point, we need to, before we even launch the document, we need to be very clear about how we are protecting young people and how they are going to be favored at some point. Because then, again, we are saying that women now
Why
are
favor?
high.
Why not competitive?
Not favor, really. Yes. I totally agree. But then that is why we have affirmative action, right? Yeah, that you facilitate equity so that people are at par.
Okay.
So how do young people step up? That is what we need, deliberate action, specific measures
But at
to
what
make
point?
sure.
At what point?
Let me answer at what point.
Yes.
Because when a legislation is very clear, like right now we have the AGPO. If you are deliberate and say that 30%.
Must.
Because right now,
Must.
governors and counties and national government ministries, departments and agencies are struggling because you are being told, and now even the president went even further, tell us the young people, that give us their names and the directors.
Address, yes.
Because initially, I'm 45, I take Stella and some few people, gather them in a room, register the companies,
Yeah.
we get the 30%.
And you become the account sole signatory of that account.
Yes.
All right, stay with me. Stay with me. I'd like to talk more about this, Raymond and Stella. Stay with me. And at the top of the hour, we're also going to speak to Bernardo Juang. Bernardo Juang is in Rongo. We're going to speak to him about the curriculum and the courses that are said not to be of benefit. This is something we need to talk about, right? Yes. Yeah, about the courses. Man, probably we went to school and did some of these courses. So we'd like to talk about that, and I'd also like to talk about other aspects in creating opportunities for youth to graduate. For
Yes.
example, you are a CEO,
Yeah.
you have transitioned really well.
Yes.
But what about the
What
others?
about the others?
Yeah, what
Yeah,
about
true.
the others? I'd like to talk about that. And Lois Wangoi also will be joining us in about 30 minutes with her discussion from Eldoret. Stay with us. We're back with NTV Today. And welcome back. It's 2 minutes past 10. NTV Today continues. My name is Ken Mijung. With me in studio is Stella Nderitu and Raymond Ochieng. And just before we embark on our discussion, just your thoughts on the fact that saying that they're useless courses, you know, does that bother you as someone who went through the system?
It bothers me, Ken. And I was reading one of the dailies today, I think Daily Nation, and they were giving us behind the scenes how the PS, higher education, Professor Suda, was really so much iked by this thing, and making sure and trying to push that we must come to a conclusion for the youth. Because let me give an example. It's not their problem, because we assume that it is a system, it's our education system that should have an enhanced quality assurance. That by the time that you do a course, we cannot. I remember there was a time that even we had the engineering students, whereby there were some, is it Masinde Muliro, I believe, I had sometimes back, whereby they were yet to graduate, but the Engineering Association of Kenya had not approved that course. So
In that institution.
Yes. So you have young people have gone for 4 years, and 4 years you are being told you cannot graduate because your course is not. So at the end of the day, I believe Ministry of Higher Education is doing all it can, and this thing must be sorted, and those young people must be given the certificates that they have studied for. It is only fair, and it's only a motivation to people who, and some of them look at the parents that are taking this. Some do not even have. We've seen parents. I know we were in high schools whereby some parents cannot even dress well for that young lady and gracious young man to be in that institution. So we cannot. It can hurt many lives.
All right.
Yes.
You thought?
I mean, I hate blame game, but then there are people who are responsible for quality assurance. And for somebody to enroll in a school and go through a course and then be told it's useless, I mean, it's not fair. But when we understand the role of education, then we know that education is supposed to open up your mind to help you understand and be able to spot opportunities and be able to influence. Then if you understand the education that way, then maybe you know that there's no useless course. There's no useless course. Yeah.
You just need to open your mind.
Yes,
and we have a lot of professionals who are not doing what they went to school for. For example, I'm a lawyer. I don't practice law. So we have doctors.
I did civil engineering.
Yes, yeah.
And engineers are the most boring people.
But
who talk by numbers. I also did theology as well.
Oh, really?
Done a lot of things, but you see, it's not. And the way Stella said, the university, the academy, is to open up your mind for you to have solutions.
Exactly.
It's not to have that paper to direct you to a
particular job.
Bankers, how many bankers have
done
chemical, biochemical, or even atomic science?
Yeah,
and they're releasing
But
money.
at least with your engineering, you're engineering the youth.
Oh, sure. Yeah, true.
That's okay. Let's come back to the strategies of this policy.
Yeah.
And one of the strategies that I'd like to talk about, this is support, transformative leadership, mentorship, participation, and representation. It looks broad. For me, it looks really broad. Perhaps break it down for us.
When it comes to representations and transformative leadership, and this is what we were discussing, that how can young people transit? Because we realize that Kenya is a little bit, we are getting there, and thank God for the handshake. I believe young people are going to be included in the BBI, because we are talking about, can we look at all sectors and see how we make all sectors formidable, that young people can actually transit? Because the way you had said, I was the CEO of National Youth Council, right now I'm a secretary, but how many of us are transiting? So that we don't have that, for you to be a vibrant young leader, you must have a government lapel, talking tough, going to parliament. There should be a small section that should be pursuing that. But then can we transit also others in terms of the enterprise development? Can we transit some to private sector? Can we broaden this? So at the end of the day, this part is trying to look at how do we make sure, and there's a passion that the CS and the PS have, that they are looking at a future whereby the National Youth Council will have young people represented in all ministries, departments, and agencies, and even all baranazas up to the county level. So that even if you have a hospital board, there must be a young person. And at the end of the day, it will not be duplicating roles, because it will be structures that are existing and mainstreaming young people to be there. And then it will also make them grow. Because if you put me in a hospital board, you'll be opening me around the health sector. And I'll begin to think, I want to develop myself around around that area. So that's what that part is
Okay.
going to be addressed.
Stella, your comments
Same
on
thing.
that?
I love the issue of mentorship. I am personally a product of mentorship. So if this can be implemented, really good. And you know, the thing is with mentorship, you don't need to pick somebody even without a job. You can even pick people with jobs and help them shadow people who are in government, for instance, because government is complex. And how do you help somebody who wants to have a career in government? How do you help somebody who has a career in private sector? So I think it's a very, very good way of modeling and helping young people grow.
Okay.
Leadership, again, very, very important, and coupled with the issue of patriotism and national values, again, very, very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looked to me broad, but I think as you have explained, it really sinks down right now. But there's this that I think is very ambitious. Creativity, talent identification, and development. I think it's so ambitious. I'm wondering how this is going to work out.
Talent and innovation is something we cannot ignore. Young people are talented. Ken, long time ago, if you are in high school and you hear a young person going and telling the father that I want to be a DJ, it was unheard of. It was unheard of.
I took you to school to go and play music in
You are
club.
cast from the society.
Yes.
You are an outcast. But right now, DJs,
We envy them.
actually, my part-time, I'm trying to think about how I can become a DJ over the weekend.
This guy, he wants to do
everywhere.
everything.
Because look at this. Look at the art world. It's really paying. So what if we open up these spaces so that young people who are pursuing talent, Wanyama, I believe right now if you could talk to Mariga's parents, some parents would really feel that your kids are not going the right direction. Carrying footballs, balls going to a pitch, others are becoming lawyers. But right now, look at Wanyama. The amount of money that gentleman is being paid per week.
You'll work all your life, my friend.
Yeah, some of
You'll
these
work all
scandals
your
we are
life.
seeing on screens are just jokes.
Yeah, I know.
But at the end of the day, so how can we also, because young people are talented, creative, you know, right now, I think government is really opening up to accepting creative. You know, right now, if you tell a government person that a creative is coming, you'll not get somebody in a suit and tie. He'll come with crazy hairstyle. With
We
a
see them here, the graphics department,
Then
with
tell them,
dreadlocks and t-shirts and
I want
jeans.
this in 1 hour.
Yes.
They will blow up your mind.
Yeah.
It's true.
And then you'll begin, I'll not judge him on the way they dress.
But on the output. Exactly.
I think,
Stella,
maybe to add on that,
okay.
I think first of all, it's not too ambitious. And let's talk about sports. In every county I've gone to, when I look at their CIDP, there is money and there is an allocation of sports development, even talent identification. And millions of money are set apart for that. Now, going to the implementation itself, nothing. There are no sports facilities, there are no sport equipment, nothing. But there's money allocated to that. So all we need is to make it a reality.
What happened to our social halls all over where the youth went to showcase their talent? They were grabbed and the land stolen and apartments and put up.
Yeah, and remember in Vision 2030, it provides for the establishment of youth empowerment centers in every constituency.
Okay.
Now that is not even working right now. We tried doing a capacity building session in one of the counties, let me not mention, and there's no water, there's no power. So how is it an empowerment center with no power?
Can
When we're
I
talking
address
about
to what is
ICT.
going on around that? We are reviving the youth empowerment centers. We have a pilot phase of around, right now, over 20.
In
with
how many
various
counties?
partners, spread across the regions.
Spread.
And they're in the regions. Some of them have got legal issues, but those things will have to be addressed. But then we are also appreciating that the concept of the Youth Empowerment Center was a great concept. So right now we want to harness them so that we open up these spaces, and we are also partnering with the counties. So that if they're existing in a county and counties are saying they do not have funds, then we're telling them, how can we resource these centers? That they are centers through which young people can access information. They can know the tenders that they need to apply to. They can be, capacity building can happen within these centers. So Stella, I want to assure you that, and we'll also bring you on board so that even when we go to pilot some, we also appreciate. So a concerted effort. So even if you have some few funds, pump them in, and then we see how we empower this. Because our government is also about a platform and synergizing, bringing everybody on board. Because everybody is government. Even Stella is government.
Yes, and remember, youth is not a devolved function.
Yes.
So it's upon the ministry and the national government to coordinate with the county representatives, the youth officers, to be able to serve young people. So if you're talking about talent, then we have to leverage on the youth empowerment centers to be able to help youth development.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the strategies that will be very difficult for me is entrenching patriotism and volunteerism. I had a forum here with volunteers just before the awards last year, and what they were telling me blew my mind. But still, I'm just thinking, if it's not inborn in me, how do you do it? Through a strategy? I mean, how would you do it? Through a paper?
Volunteering, why it's very critical, because remember, there's a conversation, and actually there's even a legislation coming in Parliament of how do we strip all these qualifications that you need to put on a young person. A young person walking on the street here who needs to apply for a job will have to clear with HELB, will have to clear with the Credit Reference Bureau, will have to go do a certificate of good conduct. So it tells you that roughly, averagely, you'll need around 5,000 Kenyan shillings. Yet you don't even have the job. You don't even have, your shoes are already torn to walk around dropping your CVs. So that is why we are also working with young parliamentarians who are very critical, so that we make sure that we leverage this. And Ken, why is this then addressing that issue? Because young people do not have experience, because you're just from high school. So then how can we create a friendly platforms that young people can be mentored through jobs? Because you cannot wake up and just become a secretary. There is a government language. Even if I bring a young person in my position today and they just do a memo can just sack them. Not because they don't have the right intention, because there's how government works, there's how private sector works, the bureaucracy, the language, and how to, you know, how to behave. All these things, etiquettes and power relations are there. So this one will also help build the capacity of young people from high school or from the universities, that they can be nurtured.
Okay.
Yeah, because when you volunteer, and we look for a day whereby your volunteering period will be part of your experience.
Okay, so
that then you can now take up here.
So I volunteer, it will be written in my document, my CV, that I worked or I volunteered.
Yeah, because nowadays people look at volunteering, they feel as if you've not done anything. Because sometimes you can have volunteered for 5 years and they say, so what have you been doing with your life? Actually, what I've been doing with my life? I've been working for 5 years.
No, because it's not contractual. So,
True.
It's not contractual.
So if that can also become part and parcel of the experience of those young people, then young people can take, and again, Stella, you agree, I know you will say this, it is about how you can do the job, not about how many papers do you have, as much as papers are very important. But again,
national values, just like leadership, is about culture. If we want young people to be people of truth, of transparency and patriotism, then they have to first see it. It's something that you grow with, and that is why one thing I like about this policy document is that it talks about the role of family. It starts at home, and then it goes to school, and then it goes to the workplace. So our young people going through school, the education system, even the children, learning that you need to work hard, you need to be truthful, you need to be, you know, you have to have values. And then coming into a world where there are no values, you know, you don't work hard and you get so much money, you're a thief and nothing is done to you. I mean, if we want to talk about national values and the role of youth, then it has to be a culture that is seen and practiced.
Okay. And can we stop also bashing the young people too much? Because young people are also products and outputs of our own lifestyles, and because at the end of the day, if you have to bribe your child to do something, then already you are also creating. Because even let me ask you, if a family is driving, then a police officer stops you and you bribe them. At the end of the day, the youth who are in there,
it becomes culture.
You are telling them that it's okay to bribe. So you cannot demand later and say, you cannot do 1, 2, and 3. Can we even have in terms of professionally, your son wants to do law, your daughter wants to do law, but you try to entice them to do another different course. Bribe them that if you do this, I'll buy for you this. Already that's also value systems in a very soft way.
What you're saying, I hope my uncle is not watching. He has a very bright son.
Yes.
He's doing pharmacy right now. I hope he's not watching because he'll kill me. So he said, you have really, he got an A.
Yeah.
But he said, the course that you have been admitted, I'm looking at this family and we have so many teachers, other professionals, but we don't have a doctor or a pharmacist. So what you do, go and do pharmacy. Then I'll open the first one for you.
Wow.
I hope he's not watching, so he'll kill me. Now that you're talking about opportunities, I like to talk about transform agriculture and agribusiness to make it more attractive for the. I'll begin with Stella.
Yes.
How do you transform? I heard a story about, I think it's an Asian country where we don't do the traditional farming. We don't go to the gardens and chambers with boots and the t-shirts and torn jeans. You can actually wear a coat and you farming with your tie.
Yeah.
So that is what you're looking at. That is what this policy is looking at.
Yeah, I think it's more about awareness, making young people or capturing the attention of young people. That that's why they talk about making agriculture more attractive to young people, because one, it's not really fully tapped into, and I mean, we can't talk about food security enough. We need food everywhere. And if we feed the whole of Kenya, which we haven't, then we can move to the world and feed the rest of the world.
Okay.
I must say, I'm working in Makueni, and there's so many young people. Out of the 15 that we trained, 7 of them are in agribusiness. So they're not only farming, others are actually getting food from farmers and selling that food. So it's an opportunity that.
So they're still doing the same thing, but sort of adding value to what the farmer has done.
Yes. So
that's
really
very true. We have an anchor here, Dan Mule, who sells us mangoes. And he has a farm around there. So it's very true. Okay, your point on this?
Yeah, I think Stella has really canvassed it well. Agribusiness is not only doing agriculture, but doing agriculture for business, such that your agriculture is about more of socioeconomic empowerment of yourself and even the other larger community. So right now, one of the things that the policy is also going to address, and some of the inputs we've got from different cohorts, is the attitude and mindset.
Yeah.
How do we change the minds of the young person? That the way I'd said before, that a suit and a tie is not the only way to be successful. That there's money in the dirt. Can we go and invest in agriculture? Because again, Kenya is an agricultural economy. If you look at what contributes to our GDP, coffee, tea, all these things are
60%.
Yeah, we are an agri-based economy.
Yeah.
So then young people, then if we are the majority, then we must also be part of agriculture and make sure that.
And agriculture indeed is the future.
Yes.
We have about
It is.
10 minutes of your time here. I'd like to talk about 3 things really quick. Where does the National Youth Service play in getting to this? Where does it tie in with what you're talking about here? Let me begin with the second.
The National Youth Service, and right now one of the targets of the policy is to have coordination, such that we don't have NYS feeling that, we are dealing with the youth. When you go to NYS, NYS is the youth. If you go to NYC, NYC, we are the youth. When you go to Youth Enterprise Fund, we are the people who have the money for the youth. So at the end of the day, when that synergy applies, and remember, when you talk with the senior citizens in this country, they'll tell you, I've been with senior citizens, when they say, oh, you are in NYS, which class? And some of the value systems that NYS did in terms of attitudinal change, in terms of just life skills, and right now NYS is also really pumping into skills. We have also a huge part of agriculture. You had the farms that NYS has, and again, this will also be a contribution into the agribusiness area. So NYS is a critical component that well supported. Right now, we've seen the government has, through the CS, it has been re-engineered. The president has assented into a new bill, such that they also become a parastatal. They make decisions, and they wake up this giant that we will even make parents be happy to say, before you go to the university, I would want you to be at the NYS, so that
and
you have hands-on.
So attractive that people will
hands-on skills, so that we are not only on the phone. Young people even go to family meetings, and land is being distributed, and they don't know they are on.
They discover.
And even your section is being taken. They say, take that one from Ken, and you are nodding, and they don't know you are on listening to music. So at the end of the day, we must transit the young people. These are opportunities.
Okay.
I think for me, it's just an issue of training and reminding young people of the need for service to the country, and that's how we can use NYS for the best of this country. Yeah, it's a very good platform. Again, that needs to be protected. Look at the NYS funds. Yeah, we keep saying it's important, but it's not protected. Yeah, the cases
but right now
don't have the light of day.
With this new legislation and governance structure,
completely.
It is completely transformed to be effective and efficient.
I hopefully will not see NYS 3, right?
So,
The other issue I wanted to talk about just briefly again is something you've mentioned, the transitioning of youth. Yes, transitioning.
Youth transition should be looked at very keenly. Because again, I think sometimes when you talk about the youth bulge, it even becomes so tired, because it is a fact. The young people are many, and the more we transit these young people and the policy is looking at it broadly across all sectors, so that we don't have young people only feeling that there's only one way to heaven. But there are very many ways. I know I'm not quoting the Bible, but I'm just saying there are many avenues through which young people can be empowered. And there are also strategies to ensure that happens, but also linking relevant stakeholders in a coordinated framework, so that the government works hand in hand with the private sector. And they can know private sector, and we know in terms of the skill set match. And I think that is also what is also coming to the challenge that we have with the courses, whereby we should even reach to a point whereby, and this is also what will synergize, is that young people who are coming from the universities, we are training for skills. The likes of Canada as a country definitely embraced one thing, that vocational training became fancy. Right now in Kenya, if you say that I'm going to a university, I'm going to a polytechnic, which one looks inferior? A polytechnic looks inferior. But in Canada, how did these people change the economy? That polytechnics are very fancy. Actually, to say that you are a technical institution is very fancy. Look at what we are also doing with our TVETs and scholarships and even help going, so that Ken right now to get a plumber, they sometimes advertise themselves with funny papers, you know, and you may find a name that you find at Gigiri is the one you find at Truaka, is the one that you find where. Because young people you can be a plumber in this country and you can be wealthy.
Yes.
So can we look at also skills? So we must broaden transition of the young people. So that what saddens me, I don't only want to see young people feel actually calling themselves kiongozi, because they believe that our next lifeline should be politician.
Not everyone can be a politician.
Yeah, can be a politician.
I have to add on the TVETs. I met one of the guys serving in the TVETs, and his issue was very few young people are willing to join TVETs. And there is just that perception that it's not really good. I don't think I'll get a job, which is not. So maybe we need to work on, all youth serving organizations need to work on that perception, so that more young people begin to, you know, be willing to take up that. But again, they need to be facilitated, very well facilitated. And, you know, there are no libraries, there's no equipment, you know, and it's supposed to be more practical. So it's a 50-50.
You know, the time I went to
We
school,
can use the word inadequate. You know, no means there is no library that is.
Okay,
inadequate, not enough.
Yeah, not enough, so that we work towards that.
And that can be, you know, education devolved.
Education is
Yes,
not...
it's actually a shared
It's a
shared
Yes,
function.
and that's one of the areas that you see the governors can invest in libraries.
Yes,
And it will not cost them over a period of 4 years or 5 years, proper library in your area, and that would be great service.
And that's why, Ken, the government is also trying to push the governors. These pennies that we get, can we also use
Even
them?
personal money, I mean, what legacy do you leave? Can you imagine having a library, a Mike Sonko library in Nairobi to complement what already exists? It will really be good.
I have to add the issue of political correctness, because one of the things that I work a lot in counties, so my issue has always been, why would governors invest so much on bursaries to primary and high school students, which is actually a national government function, and not really focus on the TVETs, which actually is under county governments, you know? So, but then why do they do that? Again, goes back to the citizens. If you don't do that, chances are that So citizens also, and we have to accept that there is the issue of citizen responsibility. Understand what your leaders need to do for you to benefit from that.
Okay. And I was about to tell you that, you know, where TVETs were killed and polytechnics, the time I went to school, we had art and craft. We had fully functional workshops in primary schools. That just died. Home science was practical. That just died with the new curriculum. So perhaps that's where we killed it. And because I would go to high school and you're thinking of power mechanics, you're thinking of art and design because of what you learned from the primary, but they discouraged that. And finally, we have about 3 minutes and you have to conclude this. Stella, just another document that will gather dust. What do you think?
I hope not. I hope not. Because if we implement this, then we move a step further. I hope it's not going to just sit down and gather dust. I hope that the ministry will take the lead, in coordinating stakeholders to do this. For instance, I work with the Emerging Leaders Foundation. The document talks about leadership and mentorship. So we have committed to actually work with the ministry to help in that. I hope that the ministry actually involves the different organizations working in sports and talent identification. So this policy is not only about the ministry or the national government. No, it's about everybody. So I think to make sure that it doesn't gather dust, then there needs to be a lot of orientation on the youth policy, especially by enhancing the NYC, because one of the functions of the council was to actually help in that, orient and make sure that there's implementation of the policy. So I hope that we work on implementation.
Now that it involves all of us, probably to not gather dust.
Yes, including the media.
Everyone.
Ken, I confirm the commitment of our CS, PS, and CAS. Those three leaders are very deliberate, and that's why this was opened up. And with the order and the platform that it will create, we believe it will not only be the ministry. The ministry will be a coordinator. And this framework will bring everybody on board.
Okay.
That's why youth-serving organizations are very key. We work hand in hand. Faith-based, and all the key sectors that represent the young people are brought on the table. So we hope, moving together, we are going to be stronger, and we're going to be better. And it will be a game changer.
Okay.
Yeah.
ELF is satisfied?
Yes, we will be here to keep them to account. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Raymond.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
yeah.
for coming to share your thoughts with us. And thank you, Stella, for coming.
Thank
We'll
you.
invite you again.
Yes,
It's a
thank you.
conversation that can't end until the civic education is done and everyone comes on board. But that's about what we had for you on NTV today. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ken Mijungu, and NTV Sasa is on air in a few minutes. Good morning.